Evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Obipra Ghosh and Sneha Priya from Team Envisage 2021, your host for today. We welcome you to the second online e-summit of Technomed Salt Lake Envisage 2021. eTalks is the platform where we get to have eminent personalities sharing their experiences and learning towards their success with us. We will interview them and know more about their lives after they have shared their journey with us. We will ask them questions that you, our audiences, have been curious to know. Today's guest of the evening of eTalks is a very eminent person whom I admire the most, an expert in digital signal processing, multimedia technologies, and wireless communications. He has over 40 patents, which includes things like data partitioning in Internet of Things, IoT network, automatic detection of moving objects by using stereo vision technique, and many more.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge round of applause for Mr. Arpan Pal. As a chief scientist, he is heading the embedded systems and robotic research area in TCS. Sir has more than 26 years of experience in the area of signal processing, communication, embedded systems, and robotics. He has more than 125 publications and book chapters till date in reputed journals and conferences. He has also authored a complete book on IoT. He has filed for more than 95 patents and has 38 patents granted to him. He is on the editorial board for reputed journals like ACM Transaction on Embedded Computing Systems, IEEE Transactions on Emerging Topics in Computing and IT Professional magazine from IEEE Computer Society. Mr. Arpan Pal, how have you been?
I am fine. How are you?
I am fine, sir. Sir, I hope you are safe and sound from the outburst of COVID 19.
Yeah.
Sir, we are very fortunate and glad to have you with us on eTalk. Now, I would like to hand over the mic to Abhipriyo to take over.
Thank you, Sneha. Sir, we are really glad to have you here with us on eTalks. Now, starting from IIT Kharagpur to Aalborg University and then joining Innovation Lab to becoming the distinguished Chief Scientist and Research Area Head of TCS. How exciting was your journey?
Okay, so that is a kind of a loaded question. So I have to kind of tell my whole career summary. So if you see, I started my career long back in 1990 with a company called AppLab. I don't know whether you still see those oscilloscopes and power supplies in your lab, but that time AppLab was the only company who was building those oscilloscopes and power supplies in India. And they were building products. That's the main thing. They're building electronic products. So even though I was just fresh from the college, I was interested to build a complete telephone exchange monitoring equipment, which was their other business. And the whole research, design, procurement, hardware, software, testing, deployment, I had to do everything. Obviously, there were a lot of people to help, but that is the culture that was there in that company. I was lucky that my first job was there. So I had a complete end-to-end product life cycle. I got exposure to that. And getting it so early in my career actually helped me a lot. So after my AppLab, I went back for doing my MTech in IIT Kharagpur. So this was after BTech, but after MTech, I moved to DRDO. As you know that DRDO, I was part of there is a lab in DRDO which designs and builds missiles. And I was part of that team, and that was a fabulous experience. And not only because of, yes, it is a very sophisticated team to do, but also from another perspective. The job was actually to build one small yet extremely important component of the missile, which is called the missile seeker. Missile seeker, I use call the eye and the brain of the missile, that how missile seeks the targets and then it goes and hits it. So the rest of the things are all kind of, it is more about the aerodynamics and thruster and all those things, but this is the eyes and the brain of the missile. But what made the work exciting was the realization that it is part of a much larger and extremely complex system that a missile is. So now here you learn that actually that yes, there is always a large complex system, there will be components. You may be building only one part of it, but all those things has to work together to really make it work. So this is where actually I learned a lot about system integration, complex embedded systems, and problem-driven systems research, where you build the system first, deploy in the field and understand the problems and then solve them in research. I think this is the biggest, I would call, lesson that was learned when I was there in DRDO, is the system level research. That where you actually first build systems, they will not work. And when they don't work, that becomes a research problem and you do research to solve it. And that's something I have tried to follow all my subsequent part, because after that I had the opportunity to build a consumer product in form of interactive TV and set-top boxes in a Rebecca Technologies, or erstwhile it was called MacMet Interactive Technologies. So another important lesson I learned there is that how important it is to really involve customers right from the beginning of the product life cycle. So that is where actually I start getting the understanding of the customer, because product, sometimes people think that they will build it and then push it to the market. It happens sometimes. Yes, Steve Jobs can do that. Maybe iPhone, it can happen, but it doesn't happen all the time. Most of the products are good products are built by understanding what the customer needs. So interacting with the customer is very important. Finally, when I joined TCS Innovation Lab, now which is called TCS Research, or I think joined in 2002, is almost 19 years plus now. So this is where actually I learned to create and deploy at scale. So whatever you are doing at small scale, TCS we actually could do in a very large scale, and products and platforms in multiple new technology areas. So whatever you see, the wireless communication, smart TV, Internet of Things, robotics, intelligent sensing systems, edge computing. So it is a kind of a journey that I actually taken each of these technologies and actually have built products and platforms around it, which actually becomes a part of the TCS business portfolio. But while doing this, one thing I actually kind of stuck to, and that actually helped me, it may not help everybody, but it is a very vast area. So how do you keep your focus? So as an individual researcher, I have stuck to what I focused as technology in my BTech, MTech, in IIT Kharagpur, and PhD in Alabama University. That's what I learned. So my core area was signal processing, communication, and multimedia, and which later morphed into AI and IoT system, but I still remains that. Actually. So I kind of stuck to that core technology area, but tried to apply in all these different diverse applications as a system researcher that I was trying to do. And just to summarize that, what I can tell, that the only constant thing in my whole career journey has been the technology richness and the product focus in all my jobs. I was very lucky to have that. And at that point, so I think when in 1990s, that time, very few companies were there which was giving us that kind of a product view. But what made this journey so exciting was the clarity on the deployment application and the potential impact of the research. Because that's what you have to see. If you want to kind of remain passionate about this, there has to be a purpose. So this purpose comes only when you understand what is the potential impact of the research that you are doing. It doesn't come from the actual research output. It is research output can be a result, there can be a paper, something, but that is not that. But how do we apply it? So be it in the consumer infotainment or connected health or robotics or smart manufacturing, many places we apply it, but main point is you see that whatever you are doing, how it is actually impacting the final application. So this application focus and striving for application level impact brings a purpose to the research goals, which in turn makes the journey extremely interesting and passionate. So I would suggest that it is always you have to align into these building systems and mapping applications into the systems and understand whatever you are doing, how it is actually changing that final application. And what is that impact? That impact can be a business impact, it can be a societal impact, but it has to be some impact. And that's what it makes it very interesting. Thank you.
That was really eye-opening, sir. But before we move on, let me remind you all that we are watching E-Talks in Research 2021 with Ovipro and Sneha, and we have with us Mr. Arpan Pal.
Sir, can you share your experience on how work has changed in the IT industry of which you have been a part for the last 2 decades?
Yeah, so I can kind of tell because it's almost close to not two, actually almost 3 decades I am into this technology industry. So I will give a very kind of a, I will not tell you a, what should I call, run a commentary of what is, how the IT is changing, but I would tell you more of abstract view of how the IT industry is changing. If you say initial IT, that what was I would call pre-1990, initial that IT industry was created to automate mundane jobs for human beings. So you know that it was used to create some banking, data entry automation. So there will be many such automation actually was created, but it was automating some routine jobs that human being used to do. So the mundane, that routine part is important, and that's what it used to do. Then suddenly in 1990s, the internet happened. And with the advent of internet, I think it also became a tool for disseminating information to relevant stakeholders. So all the businesses and everything, they started realizing that internet is a mean to actually give information to their stakeholders, their customers, whether it is an enterprise business, or it can be as a information and entertainment for consumers, doesn't matter. But that is what actually people found that internet can give. So whether it is a video on YouTube or whether it is a web page for your support system, whatever be it, but ultimately it is about disseminating information to the stakeholders. But the difference from today was that time, all this information was just stored data generated by other human beings. So web pages, web portals, whatever you created, they were actually the data that were manually entered by human beings only in the beginning, early stage of internet that was there. Then, and that continued, I think up to 2010 and only last decade, suddenly you started seeing this Internet of Things started happening. If you philosophically see the difference between IoT and which is Internet of Things versus the internet, which was I talked about, is now the data is no more being generated by human beings themselves by typing in or keying in data, but this data is now being generated by machines, which is enabled by sensors, which is put on physical objects. Can be living or non-living. You may have sensors on your body, like the smartwatch I am wearing, or some other things you are doing. Your mobile phone can be your sensor, or there can be actually sensor which can be the temperature sensor in your room, in your building, which can sense for fire, or there can be many other vibration sensor in a machine, which kind of look for the anomaly in the machine. Yeah, so there are multiple sensors, but you put it. But main point is the data is now getting generated automatically by these sensors, and these machines are generating that. Moment you do that, the quality of the data, the characters of the data actually changes. And that actually calls for a different way to handle this data. I'll talk about it later. But for the past few years, the focus of IT has shifted from how to generate value from this huge volume of data that is getting generated, with AI playing a central role there. So it's very important. So moment this data has become so big with the machine generated data, we are finding that there is no way we can do manual data analytics on it. So the analysis has to be automated. And this automation is coming through AI. That is the part, and AI and then robotic automation that is coming. So that is actually now changing the way we are handling. So this is the kind of, I would call, a paradigm shift that has happened from the early days of the internet. And this is still happening, and maybe in another 4 or 5 years, this will be the key thing that is going to happen. But as we go forward, we see the IT being the fulcrum of a massive multidisciplinary work involving engineers, computer scientists, physical, biological scientists, as it becomes more and more complex interdisciplinary interplay. And what is the interplay? Interplay is between algorithms, knowledge, data, and devices all together. And this is becoming the next wave that is going to come, where one person will not be able to do anything. Because algorithms are computer scientists, kind of that is area. Knowledge comes mostly from the domain specialists. So a doctor, a factory worker, they will give you the knowledge, who practice that. The data, obviously, typically still the data is part of the normal IT infrastructure. The data will come, and the devices will come from the electronics, the sensors, and so all this that has to come together to really make it happen. That is the future of IT. Thank you.
Okay. That was really insightful, sir. I'm sure our audience must be enjoying every bit of it.
What are your views on IoT and machine learning impacting our lives in future?
Yeah, it kind of follows from my previous answer. If you see, I kind of told you why this IoT and machine learning is the thing that we have to do now. Because as I was telling that we are putting the sensors and getting that data into the cloud from those, or getting the data, pulling the data from those sensors are the job of the IoT. And analysis of that data is the job of the machine learning. And only by analysis of that data, you will be able to create some business value out of that full system. Because you have to realize that putting sensors actually costs. It is not free. And getting the data out there, collecting everything costs actually. So unless that collected data shows some business value, people are not going to use it. So that is I think the first thing we need to understand. So now from a system perspective, the core of any intelligence system, in any this kind of system, is the paradigm of sense, perceive, analyze, and respond. So anything you do, you sense first, then make perception out of it, then analyze the data, and based on the analysis, you respond. So it can be as simple as it. Suppose I take a temperature sensor in your building, then like I can sense, and from there I can perceive. Then from that temperature sensor, that there is a kind of a that is a heat that is growing, and from there I analyze and take a kind of a conclusion that there's a fire in the building, and maybe the response might be to activate the fire sprinklers automatically there. So there's a very simple example, but any IoT system actually goes through these 4 cycles. And typically in all such systems, IoT plays the role of sensing, machine learning plays the role of perception analysis, while robotics plays the role of the response. So that is the way it is. But basically what it allows us to do is to understand the underlying causality of the physical event. This is very important. The event can be a machine malfunctioning or a human body getting diseased or infrastructure failing. So I'd like same thing, like if I give the example of the temperature sensor. So the point is the causality of the temperature sensor. I am getting the temperature sensor data getting increased. The cause of that was a fire. So you have to infer from that sensor data, I have to infer that there is a fire. So maybe from sensor data, I have to understand somebody is getting some disease, or I have to know that some machine is actually failing or some infrastructure is failing. So this is typically called descriptive or diagnostic analytics. Okay. So this is the first part of the job that actually machine learning plays on the IoT data. The second kind of role, what it allows us to play is the role of a soothsayer, which is usually by doing predictive analytics. So now I don't detect that machine has failed, but I predict that machine is going to fail. I'm going to give a health prognosis that, okay, this person may have some disease after 1 year. So this is usually called the predictive maintenance. It is of a machine or a body or maybe a bridge, but yes, it's a predictive maintenance that I actually predict that there is some problem and I actually maintain it to make sure that failure doesn't happen. That is the kind of thing that is. So this is the kind of predictive analytics. But it also allows us to do some on-the-fly planning that can prevent such failure or disease to happen. So now I am moving into the next phase, which we call as prescriptive. So I am not talking about that, yes, I can detect, I can predict, but I also can prescribe to tell what I should do or not do to make sure that the event happen or doesn't happen, depending on whether it's good or bad. Okay, so it is not about now reacting and dousing the fire off. What the system can tell that if what should I do to make sure the fire actually doesn't happen in that building. So that is prescriptive analytics. Or maybe a doctor can prescribe you certain things to make sure that the disease doesn't really occur. It is under control. So that is prescriptive. So this can also improve the process efficacy. It increases the efficiency and reduce our costs across all possible industry domains. It can be manufacturing or healthcare or life science or pharma or retail, energy, travel, transportation. So a whole set of verticals everywhere. Actually, this kind of things are there. So this series of descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, that is what the role of machine learning is actually. And in future, due to communication latency, bandwidth, reliability, and privacy issues, usually what happens, usually in IoT data, Internet of Things means that the data actually goes from the sensor to uses the internet to goes to the cloud. In cloud, we do the analytics using machine learning. But as we see, as I told this example, that requirements, if the moment I use the internet to the cloud, the latency is pretty high. I don't think you can do anything below 100 millisecond of latency. The bandwidth is limited. There's a cost to that bandwidth. It is not reliable. You will not get it always. And there's a privacy issue. I may not want this data out to go to the cloud. So all these cases, the machine learning analysis more and more has to happen on the sensing device itself, or what we call at the edge of the network, on the gateway or the router of the device itself. I don't want to send it back to the cloud. So now the challenge is such devices are extremely cost, size, weight, or power constrained, usually, always. It will be there when we talk about those embedded devices or edge devices that we have. So which on computing parlance means that they have very low compute power and memory. And on the other hand, machine learning, especially deep learning and other systems, are extremely compute power and memory hungry. So how do we fit those algorithms now in this? So doing sophisticated machine learning or deep learning on such tiny edge devices is not easy. It is a very, very difficult task. So this is the next research challenge that is now coming up, what we call as basically AI on the edge. And while doing all this on to build such intelligent autonomous system, we need to keep in mind the security, privacy, trust, and the liability issues. These are the other soft issues. I told the technical issues are coming from the edge, but there are a lot of soft issues. Like if I don't secure such system, we don't ensure the privacy. Will people who are using this algorithm trust this algorithm? If algorithm does something wrong, who takes the liability? So these are all soft issues. There are maybe some compliance and legislative problems, but there are a lot of ways to actually look at technology solution for them. One area, very hot area now is coming up. I just stop with that example, is called explainable AI. So it is an AI which can explain itself, why it is doing what it is doing. So yeah, that is one area of the machine learning. So with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Oh, sir, I'm sure our audience must be relieved to know these things. Envisage 2021 has come up with a plethora of events and competitions to encourage entrepreneurial spirit and overall productivity. No more, do check us out at envisage.live.
So, how can we increase a younger generation's inclination towards research of newer technologies?
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think whatever I'm saying, and so in India in general, I think the propensity of students going to research is, I think percentage-wise, which is small as compared to people who are actually going into, I would call non-research jobs. Okay. So that is a reality. But just to answer your question, I will say that there is only one key point. We are all engineers. So as engineers, we should strive to do applied system research. I think that is what is sometimes there is a problem in our academic year. Sometimes we don't want to do that systems research, application research, and try to do something more theoretical, fundamental things, which is more of a job of a scientist and not of a job of an engineer. Okay. So as I have seen in the outside, many other, and in any of the Indian institute also, good institutes there, and also in the abroad, there are always the focus is on the applied systems research. And I gave the example of a system research. I don't know if you remember that I told that system research means that you have an application, and for that you build a system, and system doesn't work. That is your problem that you take up and solve it. That is the research. So that is the important thing, that we should actually move into that space all the time. We do that in industry to some extent, but academic research also should move into that space. And only when the researchers know about the potential impact of the research that can bring into the application use case, be it economic impact or a societal impact. If you're building a healthcare system, maybe you can detect some early COVID thing, it will help the society. If you detect some early failure of a machine, it will help the manufacturing plant. But you should know that, yes, whatever you are doing, that is the impact you are getting. Only when you actually get that view, you will be able to guide your research towards solving those real problems. Problems that will impact people's life and not problems that stem from just reading a few research papers to find the technical gap. Okay. Such technical gap is still needed, but at a much later stage to improve the solution of the problem. But should not be treated as a solution looking for a problem. So problem should come from real world with real application. I think once you do that, you will actually find the purpose. Again, I was telling the purpose. The purpose of your research will be getting from the beginning. That is where actually the people will, my feeling is the younger generation, everybody will be kind of getting more and more inclined towards it because they will understand why it is important. And another thing is that I will just end with one wish that I wish that all MTech and PhD researchers here in India should dream about founding a startup out of their research thesis intellectual property. We are doing a lot of startups, but I will just ask you that how many percentage, or it may not even 1% of that, or I don't even, it will be in fraction percentage, that it is founded on their research IP that they generated during their thesis work. But if you see most of the good startups, which are, I can't call it startup today. If you see Google, you see a lot of large companies today, they're actually founded on PhDs done. The PhD work actually forms the basis of the company. So I think that is one thing that everybody should dream about. And yes, that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, that was insightful. Though we would have loved to hear more from you, unfortunately, we have exhausted our time today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And with that, we come to an end to today's session of eTalk Envisage 2021 with Sneha and Abhipriyo. And we have with us Mr. Arpan Pal. Stay home, stay safe, and get vaccinated at your earliest availability.